Hey, how you doing? In this set of videos, I talk about the amplified circle of fifths. It's my innovation or invention, whatever you want to call it. And I've been working on this for years and years and will always work on it. It's a very difficult topic. It's a very difficult subject, so it takes a long time to explain it. But there's so much stuff in here. It just takes many, many videos. And this topic is not in my book. It's not in my book because, first of all, this took me forever to map out with page layout software. It took forever. And to write it out in book form, to do this in book form, and to make all the graphs and charts and all that stuff would just, my brain would explode. So I have to do it here on YouTube, and I'm grateful for YouTube for allowing us to post videos. But it would just be a monumental task to try to map this out in book form. So I want to share it in video form instead, so that my brain doesn't explode. Now, many years ago, when I was a child, I took accordion lessons, and my music teacher, Mr. Roberts, the finest human being I ever met, showed me basically a primitive form of the circle of fifths, the traditional. And you can find other primitive forms on the internet or in books. Very simple, very simple. And he showed me that, and I didn't pay much attention. And then time passed, and I was introduced. I'm guessing early 80s, maybe mid 80s. I stumbled onto the harmonic series, which I talk about, which is very important. And this book here, I've had this book since the early 90s. This was first published in 1990. And this is actually my second copy. I lost the first one. I don't know what happened to it. I lost it. So this is my second copy of this, but I've had this for many, many years. And so you see, because of my accordion lessons and finding these books and such, I was predisposed to do something, to think something, all right? So getting back to the harmonic series, I got a lot of ideas from this. It helped me develop my systems. But one of the key points was the perfect intervals. I took the perfect intervals and I made another innovation. I call it the perfect chord. It's theoretical. I call it the perfect chord. This is a C perfect chord because your root is C. All right. I talked about that in previous videos. Then I went on to incorporate that concept, that idea of the perfect chord, you see it right there, into my amplified circle of fifths. Now, in your primitive basic circle of fifths, you already have that. I understand. It's already there. It's not my invention. But I try to show now that this perfect chord would be basically a launching point for other ideas, okay? It'd be your base to move from, to move into other ideas. And with that in mind, I moved into the idea of taking, let's say, your perfect chord here and your outer major data ring, and you take the tones of each of these chords, all right? And you map them out, and you get scale shapes. So you see I moved from a primitive circle of fifths to my theoretical perfect chord. All right, then I moved to scale shapes, which I talk about. And I want to talk about them today again. Scale shapes, there's so much to be said. I can't do it in one video. I can't even do it in 10 videos. So then I thought, well, we have our scale shapes, and let's review that, because I mentioned the first time that we had basically 3 scale shapes for your major scales or modes built on or made from your major scale. All right, I talked about that, and I said there were three shapes that we can deal with. And when we use three shapes, all right, on our circle of fifths, when we map out our scale shapes, we would use three so we don't have clutter. And those three would be, and I already showed these, be this shape, right, this shape, and this shape. These are the basic shapes. All right, I showed that. I did a couple videos. Then I showed how they look on the actual circle of fifths. See, these are three different shapes. See, here's your claw hook shape there. Here's a claw hook this way, going the other way, facing the other way, and here's kind of an elongated, stretched out S shape. But those three shapes, if you map them out with the rectangular chart, all right, it would look like that. So here's what you have, the three basic shapes. I talked about that. And you can use that on one circle of fifths charts so that you don't have clutter. Now, you can map out scales other ways. I didn't talk about it. Here's how to get a C major scale this way. All right, you get your 7 tones, and here's another way. But you see, they're not contiguous. See, they're not all touching. They're not all beside each other. They're not touching. See here, they're not touching. So you can do it other ways, I wanted to tell you, but they're not contiguous. Right? These are contiguous. These are immediately adjacent, and all the tones are touching in some fashion. All right? Then I showed the scale shapes for the modes built on or from the traditional melodic minor scale. Now I call it the minor major scale because in my scale system, my scales are made of 2 distinct scale phrases. So in the traditional C melodic minor, you would have 1 minor scale phrase and 1 major scale phrase. But you get different scale shapes. When you map them out on here, you get different scale shapes. All right? You get this shape here. You get this shape. I call it a giant figure I, letter I. All right? You get this scale shape. And then you get others, which I didn't talk about. But you see here, all right, this scale shape here, all right, is nothing more than you take this scale shape here and you slide it down, right? You slide it down one slice, right, on your circle of fifths. This would be a slice. You slide it down, and you get this. You see this here? We slid it down, and then the G moved from here up to here. But that's basically the same scale shape, only slightly different, just slightly different. Then you also have others, which I don't need to talk about because it's not necessary, but I want to show you that they are available. Here's another scale shape, you see? And if you slide this scale shape up, all right, you slide it up, then what happens is your G that was here will now be positioned here. You see that? It's all you did was slide it. Now, if you're paying attention, you'll see that the very first scale shape that I showed, all right, look at that scale shape. That's the very first one. All right. So if this is really hard to do. If you take this scale shape here and you slide it over, all right, you slide it over, then the B will be moved. It'll show up in a different spot, like this here. So you see these three are somewhat slightly related because all you did was you shifted over or you shifted up. You did something, but these are very, very similar. If you look at them closely and you study them, I won't go into detail because I'm already running late, so I got to keep moving. And those first 3 basic scale shapes for the traditional C melodic minor, all right, would look like this. It would look like this. That's the 3 scale shapes I just showed. If you want to make build modes on or from the C melodic minor, and I call it the C minor major, but they would look like this. So you see, for the melodic minor, modes, you could use 3 scale shapes so you wouldn't have a cluttered up chart. All right, you have these to pick from. If you're making scales from your major scale, in other words, you're making modes on or from your major scale, you would see these 3 shapes. You could use these if you wanted to map them out and not have clutter. All right. Then I said you could reduce it down to 2 scale shapes, and you would have less clutter. All right. Let's say you had 3 scale shapes. So that allows you to have variety, flexibility. All right. And you could also have a challenge, which we'll do in our next video, where the teacher would challenge the student to locate scales and use scale shapes. We'll talk about that later. But if you narrowed it down to 2 scale shapes, it'd be a little bit neater than 3. All right, and you would also be able to find that the tonic of the scale will fall either in the major data ring or the minor data ring, which I talked about in previous videos. All right. Then if you decided, you say, hey, I want to use only 1 scale shape for really complete tidiness, then you would have a very simple setup. It would be very neat and concise. So you say, well, I'm confused. So let's show this. Let's demonstrate. Let's say you have your C major scale, all right, a major scale, and you want to map out all the modes that you can build on or from that major scale using only 1 scale shape, and your tonic is C. It's always C. So here we have the C major scale. The tones are mapped out with this scale shape, all right? And we're using the same scale shape, and we're sliding it down. All we do is slide it down, and we got our C minor 3 scale. So there you have your modes with only 1 tonic and only 1 scale shape. That's what I've been trying to say. And then so we move to the next, we slide them again, right? Same tonic, same scale shape, and in the same, featuring the same data rings. See this? Same tonic, same scale shape, and we're staying within the same data rings. Boy, that's really hard to get in there. So then we have these, we have more, and all we do is slide them. We have 3 more different scales with the same tonic, same scale shape, and we're using the same data rings. This is a beautiful thing. This is where the neatness comes in. All right? Now, when you have your traditional melodic minors, Okay, let me do this. Let me show that C major scale with the different scale shape. You can do the same thing. Same tonic throughout, all right? Same data rings, but different scale shape. That's that stretched out S shape. So you see we have that. We have our C major scale. That's how we started. Now we slid it over. All right? Then we do some more. Same tonic, same scale shape, same ring, data rings. You get that? You can study this slowly and carefully if you want to. And then here's 2 more. So I just showed how you can map out all the modes built on or from the C major scale using 2 different scale shapes on different charts. And then you have your traditional C melodic minor, and I call it, as I said, minor major, but still you can map it out using, let's say we'll use this scale shape, right? One of the basics. Now all we do is slide it, and we start to get the other modes, the other scales built on or from the melodic minor, but in this case we are sticking with the same tonic. The same tonic. So this is our first 3. Excuse me. And we have 3 more. And you see you have to use two different charts, because if you try to put these all together, you're going to have a jumbled up mess. You still need to use separate charts. There's three more, right? And there's your remaining one. And you can do those 7 scales or modes built on the C minor major scale with a different scale shape. That's the different one that I showed. You can do that. There's 3, the first 3. Then there's the second 3. And then finally there's that straggler, the last one. But you have to use different charts, because if you try to overlap them and blend them, you have a mess. You just have a mess. So that's what I wanted to show. So what did we do? We talked about 7 modes built on or from a major scale. And in this case we used C major. And we talked about 7 modes built on or from the traditional melodic minor scale. And to prevent any confusion, I showed you the names of the original traditional modes. All right, I just simply call them Glarian modes. I talked about that. And then the ones that came later, the ones actually that I named, I gave these names. I call them post-Glarian. I showed those in previous videos. So you know the mode names now. You know the traditional. I've introduced the traditional as a reminder, and I've also shown you my names that I made. And they should stick. They should hold if people pay attention. Then I showed you that you can take one major scale. I did videos on this, and you can get your different modes built on or from the G major scale. So you see that the modes will be the modes of G, but the scales, the correlated scales, will have a different tonic in each case. And that is different from this. If you want to map out modes with the same tonic, you can do it. You can do it. Your correlated scales will all have the same tonic. But the mode of something will be the mode of a different tone in each case. See, that is different than what I just showed you. These two methods are different. And also, I'll get into this in the next video, I'm pretty sure. You see my scale phrase scale name. This is the name of the scale. This is what I call my scales in my system. Well, these scales each are made of 2 scale phrases. And so here you see the scale phrases used to make each scale. For example, you have the C minor 2 scale, and that's simply made of 2 minor 2 scale phrases. Or here you have the C major minor scale, and that's built with a major and a minor scale phrase. Okay, I say all of that as a preparation for the next video. And I hope that made some sense, because there's so much stuff to say about the amplified circle of fifths. It's just so much, it takes forever. I didn't put it in my book because it would be a monumental task to map it out and draw it. So that's it. So thanks again for being patient, and maybe we'll see you next time. Good night.